Well, hello, freedom seekers. Today, I'm excited to be doing this live stream. It's not. I usually do my live streams in the evening, but this is just a topic that just actually first thing when I woke up this morning, this topic came it popping into my head, and so it's just something that, with all the material on this topic running through my head, I didn't want to take and wait until later to kind of give this information out today, and so I'm just going ahead and jumping on this morning and doing this live stream. Now we're going to be doing this live stream today, talking about two different relationship structures, and those relationship structures are, one is monogamy and the other is non-monogamy. And they're two very different relationship structures. And it's important to really understand the importance and the relevance of structure, because you see, what happens is that, and this has been my experience through most of my non-monogamous life, is that because I've been non-monogamous now, living my ethically and consensually non-monogamous life for 14 years, almost 15 years. And I've seen a constant stream of people struggling in their non-monogamous life. And I've struggled in my non-monogamous life until I started to understand this. And that's about structure. And, you can imagine if you were to take and wanting to build a 20-story apartment complex. And a 20-story apartment complex cannot have the same foundation, and it can't have the same structure as a 2-story apartment complex or even a 2-story house. But yet what happens, and if you do that, if you take and try to put a 20-story apartment complex together with utilizing and following the same structural guidelines as you do with a 2-story house or 2-story apartment building, then you're going to be putting a lot of stress on that structure. And all that stress is going to eventually take its toll, and the whole thing is just going to collapse and fall apart. And I've seen that happen over and over also in people living non-monogamous relationships, because they don't understand the importance and value of structure. And last now, 3 days ago, I made my last live stream. And so if you just go and you look there in my videos, you'll see the last live stream. And it was an in-depth look at structure and how it impacts all the various areas of our life. And so I'm not going to go as in-depth on the structure part of that. But that's a great video for you to go back and to watch and get caught up on. But then this video is specifically applied to the structure in relationships and the difference between a monogamous structure and a non-monogamous structure, and explaining then, I hope at least you as my viewer will see for really quickly here, like, oh, this makes so much sense. Now I understand why there's been the stress in my relationship trying to live a non-monogamous life with non-monogamous relationships. And so it's like that 20-story, apartment building that has the structure of a 2-story apartment building. And so you have to have the right structure in order to be able to take and create the life that you want. And I'll give you some help today creating that right structure for an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, and really excited to bring this information to you today. Now, it's the same thing in just another example of structure, because structure is absolutely everywhere. And I talked about this also in detail in my last live stream video, but just one more quick example of structure. A river has structure. The banks of that river create the structure so that river then can flow, and it provides that direction for that river to flow in. And you can imagine, though, that if that river didn't have that structure, and so you just pull that river out of the earth there, and you go ahead and you drop it over to, let's just say, you drop it over to the ocean. Is the river going to operate at all in the same way? It's not going to have the same structure. And again, then that river is just going to collapse and it's going to fall apart. And so often I've seen this happen, and with people living an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, but their relationships have so much stress in them, and a lot of times they end up collapsing. And if they don't collapse, then they don't thrive. They just exist because people just make them work. And so we don't want to have you just make your relationship work and just exist with it. We want you to thrive with it. And so just briefly, a little bit about myself. My name is Non-Monogamous Mark, also legally known as Mark Clayton. I live in Ventura, California with my partner here in Ventura, my non-monogamous partner, and I also live in Seattle, Washington with my partner in Seattle and my girlfriend in Seattle. And then I have a new partner as well, and don't know what we're going to work out on living arrangements like that and so forth, but she's in Australia. And I wanted this morning to give acknowledgement and give thanks to two of my partners, and that would be Kat, my partner here in Ventura, because she's just I mean, I just love her deeply, and but she and I have gone through this process of tremendous growth, and together then we have created a business together. We call it the Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association. And through the Non-Monogamous Lifestyles Association, here very recently we launched the ELF Academy. And the ELF Academy is an online educational venue where you can go and you can learn how to create a life that is easy, liberated, and free. That's what we call it, the ELF Academy. You see, because most people, and when I look out there and people trying to live a non-monogamous life, it's not easy. It's not liberated in the way that they thought it would end up being liberating. It's constricting and constraining, and people even say it's complicated, their relationship. And sometimes then it's not all that fun. And when I had lived in my monogamous marriage for 27 years before my wife and I opened up our marriage and then started living a non-monogamous life. And when we made that transition, we spent 2 years transitioning. Before I went out and had a new set of relationships or had sex with anybody, we spent 2 years working on the transition. And one of the steps that we did along the way is that we went out and we sought out a lot of people that were living non-monogamous lives, and we talked to them, and we sat down with them, we went into their homes, we met at coffee shops with them, and we talked to them about their non-monogamous lives. And that really helped us a lot in making the transition. But the same thing, I adopted a lot of things that I learned in making that transition to the things that people were telling me. And that's then later where it started becoming problematic. And I realized that this just doesn't work, and we've got to figure some things out. And that's when I realized the structure in my relationships was wrong. And the things that I was taught about creating the structure in my relationship, it came from people that were living non-monogamous lives. However, they were just really kind of following a pattern of what they learned in their monogamous life. And, it's the same thing. The way that we learned to love in our life is through our mononormative culture and society. And so that ends up creating some real problems when you learn and move into an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. And that's why this topic here today about relationship structure is so important to understand. And I'm happy then to bring this information to you today. And so I want to thank Kat for helping me, because we've been through a process of not only building our online academy called the ELF Academy, Easy, Liberated, and Fun. And there's a free membership you can get for yourself. I go down there in the description. There's a whole bunch of things for free resources and things that I have listed for you there. There's 4 free gifts for you down there. And one of those things is a link to get you a free membership in the ELF Academy. Another one of those free gifts down there below, where Kat and I are doing a 16-week course right now about the 3 steps of living an easy, liberated, and fun life to totally transform your life. And so we're doing that live course now. We just last night finished up the week number 7 out of 16 weeks. And so we're headed into week number 8 next. There's a link to that course down there in the description as well. And that's a course that we sold for $697. And so if you decide to jump on this course and get involved and what have you, just please don't tell people what I'm going to tell you next. Don't mention this in the course to the other students. And that is that right now is that and why I'm doing this is because I really appreciate my YouTube audience. It's an audience that I have been chatting with now for years, and I appreciate all of you who take the time to watch this video. And so there's a link down there that if you click on that link, to take you over to the course, you can take this course and get a 92% discount. That's a huge discount. 92% discount, but you need the secret discount code. I don't publish that. It's not going to be found down below. I'll just go ahead and give that to you now. And that discount code is discount 92. And so you're going to write it all out in caps. Discount. And so all in caps, and then the numbers 92. No space. So all caps, discount 92. And so you want to go ahead and just plug that discount code in and just see what it does with the price of that course for you. And that's, again, my way of saying thank you and appreciating my YouTube audience and saying thank you for watching my videos. And so I hope that then this video will be very meaningful to you. So Kat is the first woman in my life that I will want to acknowledge in making this video. The other woman in my life is Fee. I want to acknowledge her because she's a new partner in my life, a new love that I have, and she's the woman that's over in Australia. And she's new to living her ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. She's 46 years old, and for all of her life, she has lived under those same things that many people do, where she, just tries to self-restrain herself, sexually. I mean, she's this woman, she's got a sex drive that's just incredible, and she's beautiful. And but she has limited and restrained and kept herself held in, and it's just drove her crazy. And so, she is new in living her ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. And she then is asking me questions and all the time, and this morning then I woke up with all this material to do this video with is really because of things that I'm wanting to help her with. And so she'll be getting a link to this video as well, as she's asleep right now in Australia. It's actually Friday morning, early in the morning. It's 9:12 here, so it'd be 4:12 Friday morning in Australia. So it's tomorrow, and so it's like the future. so anyway, and so we're going to get into this then material, and we're going to start out by just taking and putting an M here for monogamy, and looks like my marker is drying out on me. So let me grab another marker here. That's better. M for monogamy. And then we're going to over here put ELF, EC, M. You see, and so that's an easy, liberated, and fun, ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. Now, ethical and consensual non-monogamy is an umbrella term that we created to really take and talk about all forms of ethical and consensual non-monogamy. Whether you're swinging, having friends with benefits, whether you're a hot wife, or whether you have an open marriage, or whether you're polyamorous or polyfidelitous, there's many, many different varieties of ethical and consensual non-monogamy. And there are varieties of unethical non-monogamy, things like cheating. And those are unethical non-monogamy, and they're not consensual because if you're cheating on your wife or husband or boyfriend or girlfriend, they're not giving consent to that, and that's makes it unethical, and it's certainly not consensual. And so we're talking then here about people that live a life that's ethical and consensually non-monogamous. And that means then all their partners, that the people they have loving or sexual relationships with, because I mean, I know people that have a relationship where they live with a partner that they love, but they are great at doing life together, but they don't do sex together, and they haven't had sex for 5 years together. But so then sometimes then those people start to cheat. Other times those people then will start to have conversations between themselves, and they'll say, hey, let's just go ahead and have an open marriage, or let's try swinging, or things like this. And so there are people that then have relationships that don't have sex. There are people that have sex that don't have relationships. And that's all just fine as well, as long as it's under the umbrella called ethical and consensual non-monogamous, and that all parties, all the people that you have a loving relationship with, all the people you have a sexual relationship with, they are all on board and aware of everybody else that you're involved with sexually and emotionally. And so that's the key then. That's why we have the ethical and consensual non-monogamous. And I'm here today to help you to live that life in a way that's easy, liberated, and fun. You see, because here we are. Monogamy, basically, monogamy comes from an area of what we call scarcity. And over here, this life comes with abundance. And we want to help you to take you farther into abundance and as far away from scarcity as you can get. You know, because scarcity, that's what monogamy is all about, because you're taught all of your life you have to keep your love held in for one person. And sex is then supposed to be for just one person your whole life. That's the ideal of monogamy. And so then, you know, when people then went from, you know, having sex with one person for their whole life because birth control was discovered and people started wanting to have more sex then, you know, and then people then go ahead and start having sex, but it's called serial monogamy. They go from one partner to another partner, or they just don't really tell anybody what's going on in their sex life. They just start having sex with a lot of people. And so with what we really want to help you to do with having an abundant, ethical, and consensual non-monogamous life that is easy, liberated, and free, then we really help you to have more sex. It's like what I call my philosophy of more sex with more people more often. And so if that's the life, sounds like a life that you would be interested in, then I want to then really introduce this idea of the relationship structure to you and help you to understand the difference between a monogamous relationship structure and an ethical and consensual non-monogamous structure. And again, just like those examples I gave with a river, put it into an ocean and it'll just fall apart. Or a 20-story apartment building being built with a structure of a 2-story apartment building, and it's just going to fall apart. And so I want to help you to take and put the structure in place, and because what happens, like talked about with that 20-story apartment building, is that you try to build it with the structure of a 2-story apartment building, you're going to put a lot of stress and strain on that whole structure, because it's made for a 2-story apartment building. And if you're going to take and create an ethical and consensual non-monogamous partner or non-monogamous life in an area of abundance, where you can have an abundance of sex, an abundance of relationships, and an abundance of love, then you try to create that with the structure you have over here, and you're going to put a lot of strain and a lot of stress on that structure. And then eventually what happens is the structure crumbles, or you really just survive in it. And we don't want you to do that. We want you to thrive. We want you to live your life so it's easy, it's liberated, and it's fun. And so let's go ahead and get into this then and see both of these structures come with feelings. And the feelings are different. They've got to be different. The feelings from monogamy are different than the feelings from ethical and consensual non-monogamy. And just as an example of that, my partner Kat, she gives training about jealousy. And one of the things that is when you have your feelings over here in monogamy, then it's like you're supposed to be jealous, because if I'm not jealous, then I'm not really loving this person. You know, so if that person takes and looks at someone else and has interest in someone else, I'm able to express my love for them by showing a little bit of jealousy. Otherwise, if I don't show a little bit of jealousy, it's like I don't love them. And so that's how your feelings in monogamy then are much different than your feelings in ethical and consensual non-monogamy, because I've got personal experience with this. My Seattle girlfriend, when she and I have been together for 11 years and coming up on 12 years pretty soon here. And when she and I first got together, she'd only ever been monogamous in her life. And boy, it was fine, because she was I was married and then had two girlfriends before her. So she was basically my fourth relationship, all at the same time, and having sex with all four women. And she was just fine with that, because she kind of, she knew right up front about the other women in my life. And so she was fine with that. Now, one of those women I knew the relationship was going to be ending very soon, because she was going to be moving from Seattle to Reno, Nevada. And so we were just going to end our relationship. And so then when that happened, then that left me with three relationships: my wife, another girlfriend, and then my Seattle girlfriend, the one that's still my girlfriend today. Well, in time, the other girlfriend that I had, my relationship with her faded as well, because our schedules just didn't really work out so we could spend the kind of time together very well, so that we could have great sex and great times together. And so, because she was she's a private duty nurse, and so she was on a scheduled situation that I couldn't make work for me. And so after a while, then that relationship faded away, being able to just not see her as often. And then I'm seeing my girlfriend in Seattle, Chris. I'm seeing her like all the time. And by the way, I've got a video in my videos as well. Just check them out. But I'm looking for a boyfriend for my girlfriend in Seattle. There's a video I made I posted it, I think, on around right before Valentine's. So you'll see it there. But I'm looking for a boyfriend for my girlfriend in Seattle. And so if you're interested in that, and if you're a guy looking for a girlfriend, and it doesn't matter if you're in Seattle or not, because she's also looking to have boyfriends that she travels with and travels to go visit and see and things like that too. So check out that video if you're a guy and you're interested in a great gal. But and so the feelings, though, are different from monogamy and in ethical and consensual non-monogamy. And so jealousy is just one of those feelings. Love is the same thing, that we try to take and carry with us our concepts and ideas of love into our ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. And for me, that became a problem. When I met Kat, I'm deeply in love with Kat, as I still am. But I wanted to make sure that because I started spending half my time living with Kat. We were both in Seattle at the time. And so I would go from my house in Seattle, where Chris lived with me, to Kat's apartment, where I lived with her half the time. And I'd go every 3 days. I'd go back and forth every 3 days, spending 3 days at a time with each person. And so, but then when I first started to do that, it's like I want to be a good boyfriend, because these are the things that were taught to me when I was visiting non-monogamous people in the transition that my wife and I went through to open our marriage. And, and I asked one guy, and says, well, how do you stay in touch with the women in your life? And he says, well, I make sure that I'm in contact with them every day, just a short text or just a short phone call or something, but I'm in touch with them every day. Well, but see, then as my relationship grew with Chris and as it grew with Kat, then that became problematic, because when I was with Kat for just 3 days, it was like I wanted to spend really great time with her for 3 days, but I was trying to spend a half hour to an hour in conversation on the phone every day with Chris, and it started to become a real, I'm being pulled too many ways in too many different directions, and it just wasn't working because it was a structural problem. And so I had to start to understand that I don't love either one of them any less if I'm not talking to them on the phone every day for an hour. And so that's where we start to redefine love in the way of being able to live an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. That we change the structure. And so love is, sure, it's the same word, but the feelings involved with this are a lot different with living an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life than they are living a monogamous life. So another part of this here then, because is our identity. Okay, now when I lived a monogamous life, then I had a particular identity that went with my monogamous life. And when I started living my ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, then I had to shift my identity. The identity, though, has, I'm just counting here in my notes, has 8 elements in your identity. And I'm going to go through all 8 elements. And I was able to shift some of those elements, but because I didn't know what I am teaching to you today. And so therefore, not all of these elements really got shifted. And again, then, that's then creating the wrong structure in your non-monogamous life. And when you have that wrong structure, it creates stress and strain on that structure. And so those getting started then on those different elements of identity. The first is belief. The beliefs that you have for monogamy are much different than the beliefs that you have with non-monogamy. And so, for instance, then around sex, in monogamy, it says, well, you can only have sex with the person that you're in a relationship with. And I was for most of my adult life, I lived a very religious life. And certainly I was judgmental on anybody who had sex outside of a long-term committed marriage type relationship. Like you shouldn't be having sex with other people, and so, whether even for single people, it's like my belief was that you shouldn't be having sex unless you're in a marriage with that kind of relationship with that person. And so I had a lot of beliefs about sex. I had a lot of beliefs about love. And I had a lot of beliefs then about how the relationship is to be done. And that's part of this structure. And I had to make some shifts for me to go and live the sexually liberated life I live today. And even that was a real process, because I first had to go from living my sexual scarcity thought beliefs in monogamy to where I had to shift to abundance and be what I called, and a lot of people call living a sex positive life. But then even living a sex positive life, I found I had some problems that come up with that. And so I had to move then from that to living a sexually liberated life, because there's a big difference between being sex positive and sexually liberated. And again, you'll find a video, just search my videos for sexual liberation, and you'll find a video that talks about the difference between being sex positive and being sexually liberated. Way different. And so I want to help you to live a sexually liberated life that's easy, liberated, and fun, and so you can enjoy an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. And I meet people that are swingers, and other people that don't even want to say that they're swingers, but they're having sex with multiple people. And it's just strictly recreational sex. Kat and I have a couple that we have sex with now. And they don't see themselves as being non-monogamous at all. Now, they can see us as being non-monogamous, but they don't see themselves as being non-monogamous, even though they're having sex with us. But that's just for recreation. It's the same to them as getting together with someone, going out to dinner, or playing cards, or going for a walk or a hike, or to the movies, or anything else, because it's just recreational. But you see, I disagree with that, because if you are having sex with more than one person, because that's the idea. Monogamy is where you have sex and romantic relationships with just one person, not more. And so people who are having sex with more than one person, but it's recreational, that still falls under ethical and consensual non-monogamy, because you're having sex ethically and consensually with more than one person. And so these are here then all about the beliefs, because people still want to keep their beliefs attached back here to monogamy and be able to say, I'm monogamous. And so that's where you've got to start to make these shifts so that you have the structure in your life to make your life work. And if you don't have the right structure, it's not going to work that well. Okay, and so beliefs is the first thing. Then under identity is one of the elements. Then another thing is values. The values that you have are different for monogamy and for ethical and consensual non-monogamy. And so the values that I have are, I want to love abundantly. Now, other people that want to just keep love for one person, and then they can just choose that they want to have sex abundantly. That's still ethical and consensual non-monogamy. But for my life, I want an abundance of love to give other women, because I just love women. And I want to receive an abundance of love from other women. And in my 14 plus years now, and living my ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, I love the sex that I have in my life, but I love the love that I am able to give and the love that I'm able to receive. And so that's where I have a value of loving many lovely, wonderful women in my life. I have a value of having sex with many wonderful, lovely women in my life. But I can't have those values if I'm living a monogamous life. And so that's where values come into play. And then attitudes. You see, when I was monogamous, my attitude was that having sex with multiple people is wrong. And so I would even have friends that I would have conversations with, and I'd say, well, you're not married to that gal. Even though you're not having sex with multiple people. I remember very clearly a conversation I had, and I really felt bad about it now. Because you see, I was in that 2-year time area of starting to move my beliefs, my values, and my attitudes from monogamy to non-monogamy. But they're still kind of stuck over here in monogamy. And I have this really close friend, and he started spending weekends together with his girlfriend, because they both lived in separate apartments. Then they started spending weekends together. And I said, well, then are you sleeping in the same bed? Well, of course we are. Well, then you must be having sex. Because he, like myself, he had a Christian belief system and a Christian background. And he, called himself a Christian like I called myself. And my belief was, well, how can you being a Christian and be having sex with someone that you're not married to? That was my attitude, and I one time conveyed that to him. And that was a big wake-up call for me, with understanding my attitudes had to start to shift, because I had started to shift my beliefs and my values in that 2-year transition period. But I hadn't switched my attitudes yet. Attitudes about sex. I remember going by this shop. There was, a shop that has adult toys. It's a sex shop. And it was like, oh, I can't go in there. I couldn't let myself go in there. I was curious. I was interested. And so then another time it was like I was able to sneak myself into the store so I could have a look around. But oh, it was just so bad of me to just even go into that store. It was because of my attitudes were stuck back in my monogamous mindset. And so the more I was able to move, and it doesn't happen overnight, these things happen over time, but you've got to start to be aware of these factors when you're living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, and start realizing that you've got to create new structures in your life. And instead of just going with the default and going with what you're given, you've got to be intentionally creating these new structures in your life. And now I just love going into sex shops. I don't care who sees me going into a sex shop, if a relative, if a friend, I mean, if I were still going to church, I would still go into sex shops and not care if someone from church saw me going to a sex shop, because after all, don't they have great things in there to be able to enhance your sex life? And even if you're like a religious person, like I used to be, then, that you're still wanting to enhance your sex life, like I did with my first wife and I. Before we opened our marriage, we tried to enhance our sex lives, all kinds of different ways and things that we did. I mean, we even went out and bought a Sybian, which is a very expensive, couple $1,000, basically fucking machine, and so, we bought a Sybian trying to enhance our sex life because I just couldn't turn her on. And I thought, well, maybe we read all the articles about how then the Sybians are so good at turning a woman on that just really help her to get her, spark her turn on. And so, she wrote it twice and says, no, I don't like it. And, and so that's fine. But so I had to start to shift my identity or my attitudes, and where people will go ahead and buy, adult toys, sex toys online because they can do it discreetly and secretly, and that's fine and good. But be authentic and true to yourself about your life. Be who you are. And if you're trying to be this monogamous person, then it's like having a rubber band that is between these two things, and the rubber band is pulling you in both directions. And chances are, if you like where I was, I kept getting pulled back in the direction of monogamy. And that's where I started to see all of the things that I'm talking about here today, and understand that it's a structural problem. You've got to then make a choice to change your structure. And when you make that choice, it makes it easier for you to start being pulled in the direction of your ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, instead of being constantly pulled back here to the monogamous, the old you. And so that's where I'm here today to help you. And Fees is really going through this now. I'm helping her in moving into where the rubber band is pulling her into her ethical and consensual non-monogamous life in a way that is she's able to live it as an elf life, an easy, liberated, and fun life. And so that's what I want for you as well. And so that's where, again, I just thank Fee for helping me to really have the inspiration for this teaching here today. And so attitudes. And then another thing is your decisions. The decisions you make are different. But you see, here's where we have this filing cabinet in our mind. And I'll be talking a little more about that here in just a moment. But this filing cabinet in our mind has all of these things that make up your identity. All of your past decisions are in there in that filing cabinet. And so now you're trying to live this ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. And sometimes you got so many old files in that file cabinet that you haven't cleaned out, that your decisions are still being made in a way that anchors you to your monogamy and your monogamous self, instead of anchoring you to your ethical and consensual non-monogamous self. And so we want to help you to create the structure so that you're being pulled to your ethical, consensual, non-monogamous self. This is why my Cat and I, through our Elf Academy, we teach you how to develop your magnetic energy, because it's that magnetic energy. Magnets like to be sucked together, and that's true with magnets that are monogamous. They like to be stuck together, but clustered together and all, but they do that in a way that's monogamous. And ethical and consensual non-monogamous magnets like to be stuck together as well. People constantly will ask me in my coaching programs and what have you, in my teachings, they'll say, well, I just have such a hard time meeting people to have a relationship with, or meeting people to have sex with. It's because they're stuck back here, being drawn back to the monogamous situation all the time. That monogamous where, ideally, you're not supposed to have sex with more than one person. You're not even supposed to have sex with somebody unless you are married to that person. And so it's totally different decisions that you start to make when you are living an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. And so that's got to be impacting what your process here is, your decisions and those files that are in your brain and that are stacked up in there. Those old files that really don't serve you anymore. They keep pulling you back in the direction of monogamy, and you got to just clean out your filing cabinet is what you got to do. I had to go through that process. I didn't have anybody teaching me. I struggled for years with this stuff, and I hope that I can help you so that you don't struggle and have the stresses and strains that cause your structures to collapse. And so we've got to clean out that filing cabinet. And then beyond decisions, we have traits. Okay? Now, you see, I talk a lot in my coaching about magnetic energy. Another way of looking at our magnetic energy is our magnetism. It is part of our inner being. Our inner being has three parts, and the magnetism or magnetic energy is one of the three parts of your inner being. But we are trained to cover that up when we get into a relationship, because you want to be magnetic when you're looking for a relationship. And so you're out there being your magnetic self because you want to draw these people to you. And so once you draw that person to you in a monogamous life, then you can no longer be magnetic. You got to shut that down, because if you keep your magnetism going, you're going to be drawing these people to you continuously, and that can happen. Remember, we started out talking about the feelings like of jealousy and possessiveness and ownership and things of this that happen with monogamy. That can't happen over here living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. And so these are then traits that we have, that we live with, that have to shift in order to have the structure that is going to make your ethical and consensual non-monogamous life work. And then memories. I spoke a moment ago about the filing cabinet that we have. You see, so we've got all these files that are there, and it took me a long time to start throwing out those old files that don't serve us. But most people, they don't clean out their file cabinet. They just keep and hold on to they want to hold on to those old memories. And see, and this is where we have a process, Kat and I do with our magnetic lifestyles business. And that is we have a process called the Superconscious Rapid Recode. We help people to take their memories, whether they're good memories or bad memories, because there's a lot of people out there that have traumatic bad memories. We can help them. And the people who have really good memories, but those good memories want to help you to it's like that, if it's monogamous memories, it's like the memories are pulling you back to monogamy all the time. And apparently my leg here is shrinking, and so my board is slowly tilting. I'm sorry about that, but we're going to just keep going with it. But so yeah, your memories can keep pulling you back to your monogamous ways. And so your memories, then we have a way we go in and work with. There's 3 memory fields. There's your conscious memory, which, it's what I'm using right now to bring all this material to you. I had to get it all in my conscious brain in order to be able to then teach it. And then there's your subconscious. And that's the stuff that sits in your brain that's really deep and really back there a long ways. There's that's where people have subconscious memories that are just really just tragic and traumatic, and that really that's sitting in your memories can impact your whole life. And so there's your conscious memory, and then there's your superconscious memory field. And the superconscious memory field is a field that was started being written about in writing materials by psychologists over 100 years ago. But here in the last 10 years, they've really studied it and looked into it a lot farther. And now we realize that, because we used to only think we had two types of memory, your conscious and your subconscious memory. And now we know we have this third, which is your superconscious memory. And so this process that Kat and I have become trained in by the world's pioneer expert in it, Chris Duncan in Australia, then he teaches this process called the superconscious rapid recode. And what it does, allows you to take the feelings away from your memories, so that it's wisdom, it becomes wisdom. When you have your feelings attached to your memories, then those feelings impact your life and everything about your life and going forward. But when you can take and remove those feelings from your memories, then those feelings or those memories become wisdom. They become knowledge and information that you're able to benefit from instead of being held back by. And so that's a process that we use, a very powerful process in our coaching programs. And if you want to know more about that, then please get in touch with us, or join the Alpha Academy with free membership, available by clicking the links down below. But so the memories, and so your memories for an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, if you are being held back by the memories that you have back there in your monogamous world, then you've got that rubber band that's constantly pulling you back to that monogamous world. And as long as that happens, that creates a structure in your life where there's stress and strain. And it's like trying to create that 20-story apartment building on the structure of a 2-story apartment building. And after a while, all of that stress and strain on that structure is going to cause that 20-story building to collapse and break and fail. And that's what happens oftentimes in our ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. And so the memories you need to take and take those feelings and through our rapid recodes. We can do this. You can also do it through meditation and hypnosis. Just the rapid recode work where we tap into your superconscious. We're able to do that in a 1-hour session, where like things like therapy, hypnosis, meditation, NLP, all these other modalities, a lot of those will work too, but they take years to work instead of 1 hour to work. And that's kind of one of the big revolutionary differences now here of what's being discovered and developed by our mentor, Chris Duncan, over there in Australia, with regards to the work and the superconscious memory. And so your memories, and then language. Your language. You see, I did a whole series. I think there were like 6 videos in my series about the power of your words. And so you can go back and look at my videos and watch those. Each one's at least an hour long, so you've got a lot of catching up to do, I realize. And thank you again for just being part of my audience. But your power of your words, most of us don't understand and just take our words for granted. And so the language that we use in a monogamous life is got to be different than the language that we use reflecting our ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. And this becomes part of the structure that we build and we create. And so in that video series, The Power of Your Words, I talked about then how to start to create your words to work in a life where you're having more sex with more people more often. Because otherwise you're using the words that come from a monogamous or mononormative culture, and that's back here in scarcity and in monogamy. And you can't go from there to abundance using the same words and the same terminology and the same language. And so then the last thing is time and space. Time and space, how you identify and relate with time and space has got to be different when you are living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. So as an example, one of the things that I taught Fee right away in our relationship is that I talked to her about the differences between love. And one of the things with monogamy is like love is supposed to be like for the rest of your life. And so you make these obligations and these commitments, and you have all of these parts that are what we're talking about as being part of your identity that then kind of all work in sync in order to create the monogamous life for you so that you can live and be in that monogamous life and make it work for you. But when you try to live in an ethically, consensually non-monogamous life, you know, the idea of for instance, time and structure, you fall in love. You know, we know from monogamy that it doesn't always last a lifetime. You know, people get divorced all the time. They fall out of love all the time. These are people that start out in their relationship where it's all wonderful. They're so deeply and madly in love, but then 2 years, 2 months, 5 years, or 10 years later, they suddenly they don't love each other anymore. And so obviously we know that love is not for a lifetime always. Sometimes it can be, but it doesn't need to be. But when we try to take and have this identity of time and space where love has got to be a lifetime, then, and I've done this myself. Kat and I, we started our relationship this way, where our love was just so rich and deep, and is still rich and deep today. But we then take and make that love all about other times and spaces. Like it's got to be the rest of our lives. And if you watch any of our videos, we talked about how we changed that. And we made it so that love is no longer about the time and space of eternity, like that's a monogamous concept. But instead, love is just for today. And it's to be just enjoyed. You know, there's been books written about just being present in your life and not be, you know, so far out there thinking about the future and all this kind of stuff, but just be present in your life. When you're present in your life, you can just enjoy every single day. And so that's where then for my ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, being present means that I am going to just enjoy all the love that comes into my life today and all the love that I can give out. Same thing with sex. This afternoon, in a couple hours from now, it's almost 10 o'clock, and so it looks like about 4 hours from now, my girlfriend is coming over, one of my girlfriends, and coming over, and we're going to have a wonderful 2.5 hours of having sex. And so doing that, you know, we've been together, this woman, we've been together for 2 years now, and just really enjoying just lovely times of sex. I mean, that's almost all we ever do. Yes, we you know, like before COVID, I went out and took her and her husband out to dinner, you know, and Kat and I did, and had a nice dinner out with them, and so we've had some nice times together that are outside the bedrooms. But whereas like with this girlfriend, I only see her once a week, and we only get a window, depending upon the week, from 2 to 4 hours to be together. I don't want to waste any time at all, and so what I want to do is, and what she wants to do, we just have sex. You know, her husband's so sweet because, I mean, he's an older gentleman, and his sex drive is just not enough to satisfy her. And so he actually shaves her pubics so she's got a nice flat top before he sends her over to me each week. And so I know here before 2 o'clock today, that sometime probably the next 4 hours that he's going to be, you know, she'll be showering, and then he gets his razor out, the razor out, and he shaves her nice, and he prepares her for me. And so it's just a wonderful way to live, where the husband of my girlfriend can do that for her before, to prepare her and send her over to me to have this most amazing, beautiful sexual time. And yes, there's loving time and connections with us as well, but again, that's so much different than monogamy. And so time and space. And yet my girlfriend here in Ventura, she knows that I am not planning on living here in Ventura the rest of my life. Kat and I, we have plans to wanting to move other places and live in other places. One of the places we're seriously looking at is the Philippines. And so we're not going to live here for the rest of our lives. And so that's where, like last week, I had one of my friends come and join us when I was with my girlfriend, and we had a threesome. And he hadn't had sex since 2019 because when COVID hit, he just been social isolating. He's a 30-year-old guy, and he's like, he was really pent up and backed up, and he really had a good time with joining my girlfriend and I. And so that's where I'm now wanting to take and help my girlfriend to have some new connections. They're going to help her to satisfy herself, because one of the things we say about an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, living it the way of an elf life, easy, liberated, and fun, is we want to maximize the satisfaction and pleasure that we have in our life. And we want to do that magnetically. Magnetically is like this rubber band, if you think about that rubber band that I talked about, so that it is pulling you in the direction of where you want to be, the life you want to live, and where you want to go, instead of constantly pulling you back to that old way and that old life. And so that's where we then teach you how to live a life that maximizes the satisfaction and pleasure in your life, and we do that magnetically. And so that's part of teaching a relationship structure here today, is to help you so that the pull in your life is no longer pulling you back to monogamy. Instead, the pull in your life is pulling you to creating this beautiful life that is an easy, liberated, fun life that's ethically and consensually non-monogamous, where you're able to enjoy and just have a wonderful time, having more sex with more people more often, having more love with more people more often, having more relationships with more people more often. But you see, with all of those, love, sex, and relationships, if you're being pulled back to your monogamous structure all the time, it makes it pretty hard for you to really create a life that is an elf ECNM life. And so then that's then creates the importance of having this structure in place in your life so that you can have a relationship structure that works well and serves your life well as an ethically, consensually non-monogamous person, living a life that is easy, liberated, and fun. Because I see too many people trying to live an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life, and I won't even say trying, they're living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. But there's stress and strain. It's like that structure is wrong. It's like putting that 20-story, apartment building and building it on the structure of a 2-story apartment building, and all the stresses and strains that get caused then eventually cause it to collapse. And we want to help you to not have your life in any way or form collapse, but be able to enjoy an abundance of love, an abundance of sex, an abundance of relationships. More sex, with more people more often, more love with more people more often, more relationships with more people more often. And that's the easy, liberated, fun, ethical, consensual, non-monogamous life. So if that sounds like a life that you would like to live, then go down there in the description and check out all of those resources that are down there for you, because everything we do is about helping you to live that life of having more love, more sex, and more relationships with more people more often. And if you like this teaching here today on relationship structure, then give the video a like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll keep bringing more of these kinds of trainings to you. So thanks a lot. I appreciate your being here and sharing this time with me.
And every Monday night I come on live, or I do a live stream between 8 o'clock and or between 8 and 8:30. And I'm going to look really quick here. I've got some comments in here. The person says, by the way, I'm a woman and an attorney. Okay. I'm glad you're a woman and I'm glad you're an attorney. And so particularly then, you know, you can be stuck back here in the structure of monogamy if that's what you want. Choose the life that you want. And that was part of our coaching that Kat and I did last night. We were talking about last night, helping people to know how to make true choices. And so what you want to do is to choose the life that you want and what serves your life the best. And if that's a monogamous life, then fine. But then you've got to have the structure to make that work, and then make sure you have people in your life that are going to also be in alignment with that structure. And remember then that be open to always having that change, because like my wife and I, it took us 27 years to change that structure. And where we lived our monogamous life, we were virgins when we got married. And then 27 years later, it says, this hasn't worked good our whole life. We have struggled our whole life with this. Something was just not right. We don't understand what it is. We've been therapists. We've been to medical doctors, getting checked out medically. We've read books. We've been to workshops and seminars trying to fix our problem. And nothing worked in 27 years, spending over $50,000 in those 27 years. And then finally we said, let's give an open marriage a try. You know, we didn't even know what that looked like. That's why it took us 2 years of doing this. 15 years ago, started the process 16 years ago. You know, we went out and looked, we found 2 books on the subject. And now there's a plethora of books out there. And there wasn't the internet available like it is today, 16 years ago. You went to the library and you researched magazines and through the card catalog and stuff like that. In the last 16 years, now it makes it so much easier for you, because even like YouTube, I can come and talk with you here like I'm doing. And so the fact that you're a woman, you have to choose the life that works for you, and then choose partners that life works for them, whether that be a monogamous life or a life that's ethically, consensually non-monogamous. Choose the life that works best for you. And one of the things that you want to, I teach every Monday night about, a kind of a compass for you, is if things are coming up in your life that are every day maximizing your satisfaction and pleasure, and you happen to be being able to make that work for you in your monogamous life, then great, you've got everything going on for your monogamous life. However, if any time throughout the days there are things that come along that don't, your satisfaction and pleasure is not being maximized, then maybe you need to think about making a shift to an ethical, consensual, non-monogamous life. And so, but then that's where, if you're living a monogamous life, you don't want to go out and start cheating on your partners. You want to make this shift that's ethical and consensually non-monogamous. And you want to be doing that in a way then that your partners, they can either make the shift with you, or like my wife, she decided that she was going to allow me to live my ethical and consensual non-monogamous life, and she was going to stay monogamous to me. And that was her choice. That's her true choice. But you shouldn't make true choices for someone else. You make them for yourself, but not for someone else. And then don't obligate them and force them into conforming to your choice. And your choices they're not cast in concrete. They're not for the rest of your life. Like we talked about with time and space down here. They're not for the rest of your life. That means you're making a choice for today, for right now. And this is what I choose. And so being a woman, you can choose to have a monogamous life, or you can choose to have an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. Fee recently chose to live an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. That was before she met me. And she just one day popped up and joined a group that I own online, an online group. And she found, I don't know how she found the group, but she found the group and she joined that group. And And I mean, after that, it just was like, I just had this, we both had this magnetic attraction to each other. And so now she's learning, and she has a lover in her life. She's single, but she has over there in Victoria, Australia, and she has a lover that is also a new lover in her life. And he's never been around ethical and consensual non-monogamy. And so he's learned a lot in this process as well. And that's where people then, that you can only make your choice for you, not for someone else. And if then, things where he just says, I just can't share you, because you have to be willing to share your partners if you're living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life. My girlfriend coming over today, her husband wholeheartedly shares her with me because he loves her. We find in monogamy, love actually becomes conditional. Well, I'm going to love you as long as you don't ever love anybody else. I'm going to love you as long as you don't have sex with anybody else. Monogamy becomes conditional. Living an ethically and consensually non-monogamous life becomes unconditional. And Fee has told me every day this week about how she has never before ever in her 46 years experienced a love like she is experiencing now. Because for the first time in her life, that love is totally unconditional and allows her to have an abundance of love, sex, and relationships, and not be constricted and constrained and have to conform to something over here, which really tells her how to live her life. But it just wasn't a good fit for her. She tried living that life, but, she found, like I did, that you suppress and you repress and you limit and you restrict things in your life that just don't feel good. And for me, totally changed my personality over the years. And my personality changes made it so that my wife no longer liked me. But then what happened is when we opened our marriage, that personality, my old personality, returned. Whereas just a loving, kind, caring person, my old personality returned. And suddenly my wife started picking up on that. And she says, I like who you are now, Mark. I have not liked you for a long time. We're married and I love you, but I haven't liked you. It's not the same thing. Liking and loving is not the same thing. She says, sure, I love you, Mark, but I didn't like you for a long time. But now I'm being monogamous to you. And I've given you permission to be non-monogamous because I don't own you and I don't want to control your life. You have to make your decisions for yourself. And we've decided that we still want to be husband and wife. And so I'm going to be monogamous and you're going to be non-monogamous. And so I went out and did that. And she saw how my life started to transform. And when that happened, then one day she says, Mark, I'm really liking everything I'm seeing here and everything we're experiencing. And she says, if I met the right guy, I think that I'd like to try dating myself. Do you have a problem with that, Mark? And I said, certainly not. Why would I have a problem with her, having this amazing time with a relationship with another man where it just adds to her life, it doesn't take away. And that's what ethical and consensual monogamy and non-monogamy does, is that it does not take away from your life if you have the right structure. It only takes away from your life if you have a monogamous structure, you're trying to make non-monogamy work in your life, then it starts to take away. That's part of that process. Like I said, that the building will crumble on you because the stresses and the strains that get created, that kind of pressure, the only thing that can happen is you get to where you're not having fun. You're not living an easy life. You're having to work hard on your relationships, which I don't believe that you have the right relationship or the right structure if you're having to work hard, because that's what we're taught in monogamy. Relationships take hard work. Well, yeah, if you're trying to make a monogamous relationship work, it is hard. But I've learned in having an easy, liberated, and fun, ethical and consensual non-monogamous life with the right structure, it should never be hard. It should be easy. It should be liberating, and it should be fun. And that's what Fee, and my new partner in Australia, is learning now. And she's just having such a wonderful time learning and exploring, and just her life is just opened up. I mean, I wish I could read to you the message that she sent me last night. It was her last night. It was my morning now. When I woke up this morning, the message I got from her about how this is just so, for the first time in her life, she's feeling valued. I mean, she's this gorgeous, beautiful woman. She works out just almost every day. And at 46 years old, and you're just like, my God, how did I get so lucky to have such beauty in my life? And not once, but twice, because Kat is a beautiful woman as well. And so it's like, people say I'm lucky. No, it's not luck. It has nothing to do with luck. I am not lucky, because then, well, how come they're not lucky? What it has to do is this, creating the structure in your life where then you're moved to a world of abundance instead of a world of scarcity. And you've got the magnetic pull constantly pulling you in that direction instead of the magnetic pull constantly pulling you in the direction of monogamy. And so that's the structure that I created in my life. And that has just really transformed my life. I mean, I didn't learn about any of this until after 2 years. Kat and I have had our relationship for 7 years. And after 2 years in our relationship, it was about to fall apart. We were about to end the relationship because of all the stresses and strains of that relationship. We're trying to make that relationship work with everything we knew how to make it work. But all that came from monogamy. And one day we stopped because we were close to being at the end of our relationship. And we says, well, wait a minute. We're just really focused on the wrong things here. We're focused on trying to make our relationship work with what we know. Instead, we have to recreate and redefine, and we now call it reframing our relationship. And so we have a liberated relationship. And so we have reframed our relationship, so we have a liberated relationship. We live in the present moment, this whole idea of the time and space. I'm not committed to her for the rest of my life. She's not committed to me for the rest of my life. My commitment is to myself. Her commitment is to herself. And each of our commitment is to ourselves that we are going to take and maximize the satisfaction and pleasure in our life. Because when you maximize the satisfaction and pleasure in your life, and we're not just talking about sex here, Henry Ford was maximizing the satisfaction and pleasure in his life when he spent 3 years of his life and almost bankrupted the Ford Motor Company in order to invent the V8 engine. And that once he got that V8 engine figured out and invented, then he maximized not only his satisfaction and pleasure, he maximized the satisfaction and pleasure of millions of people around the world who then enjoyed the pleasure of driving those vehicles with a V8 engine. And so when you maximize your satisfaction and pleasure, then you cannot help but to also spread that satisfaction and pleasure everywhere you go in every part of your life. I'm not talking just about your sex or your love or your relationships. I'm talking about how this works in every part of your life. But then here, bring it right back to what the topic then today, we really are creating the relationship structure that works in your life. And like anything else, there is structure in everything. And that's what gave Henry Ford such a hard time creating that V8 engine. There was no structure for it. He had to create his engineers and spent mega millions of dollars and almost bankrupt the Ford Motor Company. His banker kept saying, Henry, you're crazy. This is crazy. You're going to bankrupt the company over this. But he knew what he was doing and he was committed to it. And that's what was my life. Being ethically and consensually non-monogamous put me in the seat of Henry Ford. And I couldn't figure out what was causing all that stress and all that strain. And that's where I started to learn new things and create new norms in my ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. And now I've got a relationship structure that's sexually liberated, that is a structure of abundance instead of scarcity. And it's an easy, liberated, and fun. And it's so that I can have more sex with more women and more often. I can have more love with more women more often, more relationships with more women more often. Sure, we all have finite amount of time. And so you don't want to take and create something that, creates more problems with that. And that's for another video. And I make a good video. I'll make a note of that. But, how to manage your time and things like this, because, I've got my girlfriend here, and we got a couple that we have sex. Kat and I have sex with. I've got my relationship with Kat. I've now got my girlfriend in Seattle that I also spend time with every year. And now I've got Fee in my life in Australia. And so how do you really then manage to manage this? One of the keys I said earlier, time and space has got to be different, because you're going to stay present in the moment. And one final word on that, and then I'll end this video. Staying present in the moment. I had my very first girlfriend that I ever had when I opened my marriage. She says, "Mark, you are like the watering can that I take and water my plants with. I fill it with water, and that's like, when I run out of water in that watering can, I just go and I get more, because there's an abundance of water. There's lots of water, and so, but that water is like the love in your life." And so then what happens is that when I am watering my plants, I'll go over and I'll water a pot, and the plants in that pot are getting all of the love while I am there watering. But then I'll go ahead and tilt that watering can back up, and then I'll go over to another pot and I'll water that pot, and then that pot then is getting all of the love while I'm watering that pot. And it says your life is like that watering can, Mark, where you have so much love in you have so much love to give, and people like me, and at that point I was married, my wife's deceased now, and I was married to my first wife, and had my relationship with my girlfriend and Chris as well, and she says, you have so much love, and we want to, and us women want to give you so much love, and we want to give you our sex, and so it's like that watering candle. You got to stay present, and while I am present, pouring that water on this one pot of plants, or on the flower of this one woman, like I'll be pouring some of that love and that sex on the flower of my girlfriend this afternoon. And while you're pouring that, you're doing that in the present moment. Don't try to take and stick it to some future time frame. Like that's what we learn in monogamy. But in ethical and consensual non-monogamy, you just have to enjoy the present moment for every moment, and not try to take that and create obligations and restrictions and limitations and dependencies, because you're trying to put your love in and spend it in the future. You don't even have the future yet. You're trying to spend your love coins, your sex coins, your relationship coins in the future by attaching it in the way that we're taught to do in monogamy. That's not going to serve you in creating your ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. And so again, then you want to create the right structure to build an ethical and consensual non-monogamous life. And now we've gone over an hour and 15 minutes. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take and answer any questions real quick. This gal, again, she commented, I'm a woman. And so you still, whether you're a woman or a man, you get to choose which relationship structure you want. Just like Kat has chosen, just like Fee has chosen. And Chris, my partner in Seattle, she chooses to be monogamous. But recently she says, yes, because I want to live a life maximizing my satisfaction and pleasure. And I knew you were non-monogamous from the day I met you. I mean, I knew you were married. I met your wife. I became close friends with your wife before she died. And she says, I agreed to be part of that structure. And after now, our relationship's gone on now, her and I, for 11 years, she's saying, because you spent a lot of time away, Mark, and I'm kind of like, I'd like to have another man in my life, or maybe a few other men. And that's why then we made the videos. They're in my channel again. Look at the videos of back just a couple of weeks ago. I posted it right before Valentine's, where I'm really wanting to get my girlfriend in Seattle a boyfriend. And so have a look at that. I'd love to get my girlfriend in Ventura here a wife, and that's what Kat is. She says, Mark, I have you in my life, and you're like my husband, and I just, I enjoy other men, but you're really the only man right now that I'm needing that committed relationship with. I really want to have a wife. She's bisexual. And so that's really, I'd love to help her to get a wife. So if you're a woman, and like this person making the comment, and then as far as being an attorney, and so yes, as long as you I had as many as 4 or 5 relationships that were all highly, where did I put that? Don't see it now where I put it, but they were all highly loving relationships, highly sexual relationships, and so I had as many as 4 or 5 relationships at a time. But the thing is that I can only be married with one woman, and so that's where I was then married to my wife, and until she then decided that was going to change, and she ended up dying and all this kind of stuff. That I was under that legal bond. I wasn't going to break the law and go and marry more than one person. And so, as far as being an attorney, either structure, you can be legal, have a monogamous structure, and you can be legal, have an ethically, consensually non-monogamous structure. It's just you have to make the choice of what structure is going to serve your life the best. And so that's what it comes down to, is what is going to serve you the best. And don't make your choices for anybody else but you. And don't expect anybody else to be limited and restricted in their choices because of the choices that you make. And oftentimes that's what happens in monogamy, because our monogamous structure basically means that you and I own each other, or I own you. And you're not going to have sex with anybody else. You're not going to have love with anybody else. It's just me, or it's the highway, and unfortunately that's what monogamy teaches us. That's the scarcity we talked about earlier today in this video. And that's just not a structure I any longer have anything to do with. And because I have fully moved my life from where it was for 27 years in my life, being monogamous, moved it into a structure that has taken me time to build, just like Henry Ford creating that V8 engine. It's taken me time to build this ethical, consensual, non-monogamous structure and figure it out. And I have read all kinds of non-monogamous material out there now. There's a lot of material on the internet, and I have not seen anybody teaching these things that I have learned in my life that now I want to take and teach you, because it's so important and so critical in creating a life that's going to be easy, liberated, and fun, so you can have a sexually abundant and a sexually liberated, ethical, consensual, non-monogamous life, having more sex with more people more often. And as far as then, people will say oftentimes and make comments, well, what about STDs? Well, that's the subject for another video, and we'll make those videos in the future and talk about those issues, but it's a totally different subject. And yes, I have no concern about STDs, and I have just wonderful bareback sex with all the women that I am in relationship with, and I have no concern of STDs, because just real short, if somebody doesn't have an STD, they can't give you an STD. And if they guard and protect their life in a way to ensure that they are not going to be exposing themselves to getting an STD, so that they don't get it, and then you're not going to get it. And so, again, that's really what we can do, a deep dive on all of that in another video, and probably will in the future. But then that's going to be it for today then. I don't see any other questions that came in. So thank you for, again, being my audience today. If you do have any questions, if you watch this on YouTube, then feel free to put comments and questions in the comment box below, and I'll see them and I will get them answered for you. And take a look at all the things we have down there in the description. I'll have 4 bonuses for you. Take a look at those. Thanks a lot now. Enjoy the rest of your day.